Shades of Benga Online presents highlights from the story of Kenya's popular music in the 70-year period between the end of the Second World War and 2016. The series draws its inspiration from the definitive book Shades of Benga by Ketable Music.
Good evening, viewer, and welcome to yet another episode of Shades of Benga online series. On this episode, we shall be talking about the emergence and dominance of rhumba in Nairobi City, as well as paying tribute to the legendary Zambian musician Nashil Pichel. Before then, let's listen to some music by the Nairobi City Ensemble, playing From America to Africa by David Amunga. I will be your host, Lucy Ilado.
Oh, gentle countrymen, I'm going to save your way. All people in America, all gentle countrymen, I'm going back my home in Africa. I'm going back my home in Africa. My people are crying for me, so let me go back home. So let me go back home. My life in America, such happy, happy life. My life in America, such happy, happy life. But I'm feeling loneliness when I remember Africa. I'm feeling loneliness when I remember Africa. So let me go back home. So let me go back home. Honorable countrymen, we have had and enjoyed together. I have enjoyed your rivers, and I've enjoyed seeing your mountains. But you know what? Home is always sweet, and all my beloved ones are there. So let me go back home. Let me go back to Africa. I'm going back to Kenya, my country in Africa. I'm going back to Kenya, my Kenya of happiness. So let me go back home. So let me go back home. So let me go back home. So let me go back home.
That was a very wonderful and nostalgic set for many of us who loved listening to such music growing up. If you'd love to know more about David Amunga, make sure you view our previous episodes. Today, we are joined by the daughter of legendary musician Nashil Pichel. Her name is Nawezi Hadija Pichen Kazembe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Tabo Susa, Kenyan producer and lead author of the Shades of Benga book. And next, we have Mr. Bobby Mkangi, constitutional lawyer and a former member of Committee of Experts on Constitutional Review, as well as a music enthusiast. Welcome.
Thank you.
Perhaps we should start with you, Mr. Osusa. We have been discussing different genres and topics throughout the series based on the book that you co-authored. Perhaps you could like to give us a review or a recap of the topics that we've been talking about.
Thank you, Lucy. The story so far
remember it's after World War II, when the returning soldiers came back with musical instruments. And that's when we started developing our brand by Fundi Konde, of course, with a great influence from the Afro-Cubans. That is from the mid-1940s to early 50s. Then, of course, if you remember very well, the arrival of the two Congolese, that's Jean Bosco Mwenda and Edouard Masengo. That is now the late 1950s. Then came now during the time of independence. And this time, we had the two Zambians, National Pichen, Kazembe, and Peter Sos Juma. So far, after independence, which was the sound of independence, was the twist, you remember? Now came in a more faster rumba. And that is now when Nairobi became a hub of music. There are so many other new arrivals. Apart from the two Zambians, there are also other Zambians, Musa Tunya, who toured here, they performed here. They were doing more rock. I also mentioned the Ugandans, Charlie Sonko, and the sister Frida, who most of them were under the Equator Sound Band.
Would you say the twist gave room for rumba? Because most of the twist musicians eventually ended up making rumba.
No, I don't think that rumba gave way to twist. No, because when twist was actually being produced in the early 60s, it is the same musicians who are recording and producing twist who are at the same time doing rumba. They didn't stop doing rumba. So they grew up at the same time. Both the twist, the African twist, and the rumba.
You said now eventually Kenya, specifically Nairobi, became the hub of entertainment and music. How did that come about?
Well, I think it was easier because we had better recording facilities. So a lot of musicians, as far as DRC, I think it was called Congo or Zaire anyway, they all came to record here. And so even when they opened the Starlight Club, that was now 1965, in May, one of the main band that performed for that night was from Congo. They were called OS Jazz. So that's when everybody actually tried to come here, either just to record or to tour, but most of them stayed.
Hadija, how was it like growing up with a superstar celebrity father?
I'd like to start with a small history. Dad, he comes from a place called Luapula, that is northwestern of Zambia. He comes from a family from the royal. But as a young man, he went to a Catholic school. And you know, being in a Catholic school, things are tough. The boys already started playing the banjo. We call it the banjo back home. So with the strictness of school, they decided to dodge and to leave the school and go to South Africa for greener pastures, because at that time, the mines were paying good. Him and Sosi, and I don't know if you can remember, Benson Simbey, found themselves in South Africa. Well, they stayed there. It was really tough. They couldn't cope with the life, with the apartheid and stuff. They decided now to come down, Mozambique, then they entered through Mombasa. They found themselves in Nairobi, where they also joined with Charles Sonko, Fadili William, and they started they used to call themselves first the Congo River Boys. Then later on, they changed to Equator Sound. They became quite popular. I think Mr. Tabu can attend to that, and which made Kenyan musicians a bit uneasy. They came, my dad landed in Kenya in 1957. Got married to my mom in 59, and that's when my firstborn brother was born. And later on, music scene till through independence, they even composed one song. Maybe you hear it during, is it Madaraka Day or?
Those national
Yes.
days.
Kenya inchi.
Very popular.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, sure.
Then they did for Kenyatta with Miriam Makeba. Kenyatta liteswa sana kwetu hapa Kenya wandugu. Yeah. Then from then things became rough in the late 60s, and Dad decided to move back to Zambia. When he went to Zambia, he formed a certain group which was called the Super Mazembe. And he came back in 1974, looked for where to start the gigs, and went back home, got the boys now with a new bang of Super Mazembe. Until the late 70s, he decided now to really concentrate on the Zambian scene. So if you go to Zambia, you will, he's a household name. Yeah. There's a very popular song which there's no Zambian who doesn't know it. It's called Apiri Anaboya, meaning Apiri had gone away. I think he's talking about himself, that Apiri leaves his home, and then when he comes back, he just comes back with an empty suitcase, and all his family is gone. And now he doesn't know. He looks up and he looks down, he says, where do I start? Where do I go? So I can do that a bit for you. It goes, Apiri anabuela, kuchoka kuwalale. Then it goes, Anakalako zaka, zosa werenge kanditu, Apiri anaganiza, sononiza enda kuti, makolo anga onse, anamwalila kudala.
What about the song Josephina?
Oh. Sorry, Josephina, that was dedicated to my mom. Yes. He was a composer, so most of the music he composed himself. So Josephina was just to, the way it is to chaff a lady, you need to give her some love. So he composed that one. It goes like this: Josephina nae, msichana mzuri, sura yake super, Josephina. Super gelo. Sorry, I'm not a singer.
Yeah, that was going to be my. No, you are a singer. That was going to be my next question. Did any of his children take after him?
Funny enough,
musically,
I was the one who wanted to take up music.
Okay.
I remember when I was in Form 3 in Lusaka. I was 15 years old, and normally we used to have variety shows when we closed schools. So I went for the variety show, and I sang very well. Without my knowledge, there was a European man who used to run a hotel. It's called Ridgeway Hotel in Lusaka. So he was looking for talent, cabaret singers. And funny enough, he picked me, asked for my number, called me. I went for an interview, and I passed for the audition. But the sad part is, when I approached my dad, I said, this is the way I want to go. It didn't go well with my father. I, coming from a Muslim background, when he came to Kenya, he converted into a Muslim. So I was born already a Muslim. It was hard for me to go against him, but I still love music. Yeah, I still love music.
I mean, do you think you'd want to do a few recordings in the future?
Actually, funny enough, you've asked that. There's so many artists back home, they want us to do the remix of my dad's music. Yes, so many people have approached me, but I'm still looking into that.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. Bobby,
Yes.
What is your story between, you're a lawyer, but
Yes.
you're still a music enthusiast and
Yes.
collector.
Yes.
You wanted to bring some vinyls over for us.
And I'm very happy to meet
Khadija.
And I can't wait to let my mom and dad know that I was with progeny of one of their best bands in the 70s. And as she was saying, when you grow up with music, I was telling Tabu how you connect with it. It's sort of a soundtrack of your life. Some of this music, you learn first from your parents, what they were listening to in the background. And even now, even you go further to the history, because when you listen to the pre-independence history of Africa and the sort of music that was being played, and also the constitutional journey, it's a very important anthropological and archaeological pool to tap into and to understand what our African ancestors at that time were going through. I think music actually tells you much more than sometimes perhaps what you read in a textbook or written in black and white. Music will communicate to you the emotions. You will pick up the struggles. You will pick up the joys much faster than when presented on pen and paper. So growing up, I recall my parents, later telling us the vinyl records are at home. It's part of the very important heritage that I would say our parents will leave behind for us, and hopefully us to our children. But I remember hearing them talk about waiting to go to listen to and watch Super Mazembe. I think you talk about that epoch, 74 to late 70s. Yes. My parents were living in Machakos, and my mom very much recalls waiting to go watch Super Mazembe at the one of the social halls. And very many bands that would come from the then Zaire. And so I think it's very important for children to have that sort of environment, musical environment, artistic environment, because it opens up your mind to other cultures, to other ways of living, beyond what your academic score is, what your academic world is. I think the musical world actually opens that and broadens it very much, more. So music for me is something that has been living. As I said, it's a soundtrack. When I listen to a song, I know where I was in life, what that meant to me. Sometimes I even joke because some of the songs I came to listen to and like, and I dig into the history, I discover that I was very young. In fact, there was a time I was telling my mom, you must have been listening to this song when I was in your womb, because I don't know why it resonates with me. Yes. Because when I look at the time it was produced, you were pregnant with me, and you love this song. And it resonates with me as if I'm listening to contemporary music. And so we have those stories and laugh about that. But as I was saying, it's a very important historical pool of information for me. And also inspiration in my work as a lawyer, because beyond what my parents taught me in terms of social justice, I think further lessons from that I picked up from the music I listened to, the music they listened to, and I would pick up the words, the music that, and perhaps even fortunately, before the proliferation of music or radio stations and TV stations, there was just that one radio in the house and that one radio station. So what your parents tuned into is what you listen to.
You have no choice.
Vicariously, whether you liked it or not. Sometimes I sing some music at home, and then it strikes me that, I've never actually deliberately sat to listen to that song, but I know the lyrics. I sing along, and I tell my wife, you know why? Because back then, that was what was playing on radio. And so you picked it up. And then later in life, you appreciate that what these musicians and artists and composers were putting out, or very philosophical, very important archival and curative information. It's one of the best way of archaeologists, I think, call it golden spectre. You mark moments. So music is a very important golden spectre where you demarcate how life was and how life is. So as I was saying, as a lawyer, and especially one who's interested in social justice, music has played a very important role, including to the point where now I was listening to music, collecting music on my own, including Western music. I found myself, in terms of Western music, very much influenced towards conscious, real music. Even if it's hip hop, it would be what we used to call real hip hop, Public Enemy, not the commercial hip hop,
Absolutely.
They're the sort of musicians who sort of directed you towards political issues, social issues, reggae music, with a very strong social justice message. And when you look at that and look at what our African artists were composing and playing, it's very much the same in terms of the philosophy. Just a different way of expressing it, but very rich in social justice, human rights information. So I think music is very important for my career.
All right, thanks for sharing. And to take us into a break is the Nairobi City Ensemble playing Helena by David Amunga.
Jo mama, Isaya Aoko. Jo mama, tunda langu nipendalo. Jo mama, tunda langu nipendalo. Jo mama, natamani Helena. Jo mama, natamani Helena. Jo mama. Kuimba ninakoimba, Aoko natamani Kisumu. Aoko nimefika stesheni. Aoko gari moshi imekwenda. Aoko nikarudi River Road. Aoko otisi imekwenda. Aoko.
That was Helena, originally done by David Amunga and performed by the Nairobi City Ensemble. Mr. Susa, so at what point would you say we had the indigenous music music emerging in the local scene?
I think indigenous music emerged in, the formative period was the early 1960s. But then going to mid-60s, then actually that's when we started having Mutibo, which I'm sure is going to form one of your next episodes. So there was Mutibo, and then also that was the formation of Benga music. So I would say it was the mid-60s, where now we took the rumba. I said the Congolese rumba of the 1959, and that now owned it. So we turned it became now Benga, and also Omutibo. So I would say it was in the mid-1960s.
And it was extremely popular with the locals. Were they welcoming to the new sound, to that new sound?
Yes, it was very popular with the locals because it was fused with a lot of traditional sounds of Kenya. And up to date, I think Benga is probably the biggest sound in Kenya. It's the more dominant because it's being played across the country. And of course, Mutibo with George Mukabi was really very popular. The music was faster as opposed to the earlier forms of the Afro-Cuban rumba, which was much slower. And then the Congolese rumba was a bit faster. Now the Benga and the Mutibo were extremely fast. It was more traditionally rooted.
Good. And so at what point would you say, because this is a discussion we have all the time, at what point did we now sort of somehow lose touch with this indigenous music and there was sort of a breakage of linkage between our indigenous music and what was commercially available or is currently available on the scene?
I think maybe it's a bit too early to say we lost touch yet. Because in the mid-60s is when Benga was really, it is formative years. And the best time of Kenyan music was in the 1970s. So we came to lose touch much later. I think it's too early to talk about that.
Oh, but we have lost touch. That's.
But before we lost the touch, we had the touch. 70s was the best time. And maybe we started having a bit of problems in the 1980s.
Okay. All right. So looking at the recording techniques as a producer back then and now, because you've worked with musicians from both generations, what would you say would be some of the differences perhaps that maybe young producers or young musicians can learn from the older musicians' recording techniques or style?
Yes, as a music producer, it's quite difficult to answer that because I'm not very sure what the young producers can learn from my generation because during our time it was analog recording. Like we had a band, maybe we were performing in a club, so we would perform for almost 1 year, and then we could gauge the mood of the fans, see how they react to the music. Then we go and record. And that time the sound engineer was a sound engineer. He was not part of the musicians. So we went there with the songs well arranged, the proper song structure. So what the sound engineer was doing was red light, green light, and we record. And you have to be a good musician because we didn't have the luxury that if you mess up or if you sing off, they use an auto-tune, on your music. No, you have to be good. Because if you're not good and then you mess up, everybody hates you. Because it means you have to start all over again.
Hate is a strong word.
Yeah, true. The other fellow musicians will hate you because it means you have to pay more. Okay. For studio time. So you have to be well rehearsed. But right now, you see, it's a bit difficult because I really don't know the role between the musician who comes to the studio and someone makes for him or her beats. So really, because now the sound guy, to some extension, is part of the musician, because he is contributing artistically. In our time, the sound guys did not contribute anything artistically. It was sound, period.
Wonderful. I think there's a lot to learn there.
I read once Quincy Jones,
Right.
the great American producer, say that he remembers during the olden days when musicians would come to record, they would come with instruments.
Yes.
You know, the guitar player would come with a guitar, you know, drum set. Well, there's some in the studio, but they would come with instruments. But later on, from the 80s onwards, they just come with a backpack, you know, and and I think that's what Tabu is trying to say.
Analog to digital.
Yeah.
Great. Did you accompany your father at some point in studio?
I never did. By that time, because he used to come to Kenya for recording, so it wasn't easy for us to do that. Yeah.
And do you feel like the music took him away from you?
Yes.
You would have wanted to spend more time with him?
Actually, it did. Because most of the times he would be like for 8 months here in Nairobi with the band, with the Super Mazembe, or doing his recordings. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention that he also took the scene for minors. I think you can go and check in the mid-70s, Zambia was known to be the best copper country. And that time there was so much money. People were living on welfare. So basically the miners used to drink a lot because there was money. And they couldn't wait for Friday so that they put the music, and most, it was my dad. Yeah, he also sang about them. Yes.
Wonderful. Back to you, Bobby. You mentioned the kind of music that you're drawn to at the moment, or more drawn to as a lawyer, as an activist. What would you say about nowadays about patriotic music? What role do you think it played back then, and why do you think right now we don't have so many of that kind of releases from our local artists?
I think it could be, one reason could be the history and the stage. The music just after independence, issues of patriotism and nationalism was still very much alive in the consciousness of society. And so that was a big thing. That's trying to define what these new African states were, and also who, it's a Zambian. What does Zambian mean? What does Kenyan mean? So you had to affirm that and sing such music. And also, I think the authorities also, the new authorities, perhaps had not discovered the power of such music, you know, social commentary. Because later what you come to see is, I think there are two things that affect it. The trajectory that the states did take when from 70s onwards, for some countries, 60s, even by late 60s, they had become, and the clamping down of alternative voices and social commentary, and especially that coming from music, was already being controlled. But also, we remember that music became commercialized with time. And so with the commercial aspect of music, it's the so-called market that controlled. As Tabu was saying, for them, they would go and, you know, look at what, in fact, they're observers, you know, like scientists. They observe and they can tell what they want to record, what will resonate well, perhaps even tell society where society is going wrong. But I think with time, because of technology and commodifying of music, it became more commercialized. And so with the security, authoritarian control by state apparatuses of music and art, so many musicians and artists shied away from that sort of commentary, but also the commercialized aspect of it. Many of them now just looking at what will make people jam, what will make people dance. So even if it's saying, hey, 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 you know, for 10 minutes, so long as people are dancing and you can put out something that will sell. So I think those are the two main factors that affected that sort of topical, patriotic, nationalistic, and even activistic music. But we have to remember there are still those who remained, even if it's in the underground, and they were adamant about the role that, and they knew the space and role that music could play, and they kept on playing such music. And even I think that's why you find some music when it was coming to Africa, for instance, reggae music, it was still very much underground music, and linked to the down-pressed and to the law of society. But they could still tap into it and identify with such music. But you find most of our local musicians probably shied away because of the reasons I've given.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much. Just to sum up this chapter of Rumba Taboo, of course, the live music scene at the moment in Nairobi, the Rumba live music scene, has been dominated by Congolese musicians. And here you have told us about Kenyan musicians initiating this sound, their own sort of style of rumba. So why do you think now we have very few Kenyan musicians doing the Kenyan rumba style as opposed to the Congolese dominance in the local music scene?
I think the Congolese dominance comes about because when they move from Congo, they come to East Africa, they turn out to be professional because they have to survive. And because they have to survive means they have to perform well. As opposed to a lot of Kenyan artists who they've got other alternatives of making money that they don't care much. But see, most Congolese are very professional. When it comes to rehearsals, they take their work very seriously because otherwise they have no choice. I mean, for them to survive, they must play well. And that's why it is. But there's something I wanted to add back, sorry to take you back, on when you asked about the difference of the recordings of those days and today. Like when you had studios like Polygram, and one of the main sound guy there was Isaya Mwiniamo. If you are a band and you booked like Slow to come and record, and you are not good enough, you just chase you guys away. It wouldn't take your money. You said, no, you guys are not good enough. Because they wouldn't want the name of, say, Polygram to be associated with such a mediocre kind of music. So that's something I forgot to tell you. But yes, Congolese, I think, by nature, they're very professional as musicians.
I'm sure you want to add something, Hadija.
No, actually, what he says is true. They do it professionally because it's their way of living. They come here to hustle, so they have to work hard. Yeah,
absolutely.
But with the Kenyans, you find maybe he has another job. This is just a side hustle. Yeah.
Good, Bobby.
Perhaps also it goes back to what you had asked about the nature of music, and because also maybe you look at the different styles of musicians, because what we call the river road musicians and the urban young youthful musicians.
West of Tomboya.
Exactly. West of Tomboya. Digital sort of, where it's also almost become a hobby. Even in my family, I have my nephews and nieces. Everyone, by the time they're in Form 4, everyone wants to be a msanii, you know, because you can, and with all due respect, with the good artists who come up with good products from such a scenario, but you find, I think the liberalization and expansion because of technology of the space has also sort of made every person think that they can become a msanii, they can get into a room and record something, and you know, and so we have many who just venture into the industry because of that, and thinking that I do this for fame, I do this just to make money, but not for the love of the industry and passion, and also the talent for it. We have many people who jump into those rooms and hold a microphone, and as Tabu says, the producers also want to make money, so they'll take your money, produce whatever you want. If you can do a video and Someone can play it on TV, whether you're good or not. So I think the commercial aspect also plays a big role in, unfortunately, not propelling the quality music, but also, giving us products that are not as good as what we are seeing from Congo and other parts of Africa.
Wow. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for sharing. And to play us out is Jeni by Isaya Mwiniamo, as performed by the Nairobi City Ensemble. Until next time, I've been your host, Lucy Ilado.
Sura nzuri na tabia safi, ahera. Nampenda Jeni, si kwa sura nzuri na tabia safi, ahera.
The journey through Shades of Benga continues. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the next episodes. Shades of Benga, the book, is available in all leading bookstores in Kenya. Get your copy for this and other stories in full.
Mambo vipi?